Hey there, and welcome to the PBL handout, the final project for ID 250 Learning Theory. So I've chosen a topic that really is interesting in a sense that it's not content-based, it's more practical application, and there's no experience required, which is a great thing about it as well. So the topic here is teaching students transitioning into college how to successfully manage their time and prevent stress. Not only is this a great topic to choose for college students, but also just in a real-world application. Unfortunately, we all do sometimes overcommit ourselves and experience stress. So, this is a great thing to kind of learn those coping mechanisms and skills to prevent that down the road. Of course, that target audience is going to be those young adults, most likely in senior year of high school, going into college experiences here. There is no required experience, which is a great thing about this project. So, it's kind of transitioned into those problem questions. So, as an instructor or as a learner, we want to know what can be done to encourage a healthy, balanced routine that reduces stress. So, what can we do personally, and what can we teach as instructors on how to reduce those stressors? Why did this problem arise? It's a good question to ask. Was there something that may be circumstantial that happened, or is it something that I can control? Of course, what areas will this impact? So we want to know the impact that this stress would have. Of course, there are scientific stats on how stress affects you emotionally, physically, mentally. So we want to completely prevent that if possible. Now, sometimes stress is inevitable, but there are ways that we can prevent that. So we are trying to emphasize those and relay them on to these students who are undergoing a lot of stress, a lot of pressure, and just a new environment completely. So as that kind of mentioned, that just goes into this next one here. What can be done to prevent future stress? And of course, what's the root? That kind of also goes along to why did this problem arise originally? But that's just a good thing to kind of reflect on the why and what can we do to prevent that, of course, but what can we do to prevent the future for that happening? Here are those objectives. So students will compare lifestyles that represent successfully preventing stress versus one that lacks time management. So I think it's a really important thing to be able to compare those, whether it be an experience or whether it be a physical schedule that looks a little bit more overwhelming than one that has kind of prioritized and maybe not overcommitted themselves. Students will describe the effects of stress on one's emotional and physical health. Most of us know those, but there are some that are maybe unknown to people, especially if you are in high school and, you weren't involved in many things, which is totally fine. But if, you kind of have that lack of knowledge of, maybe you haven't experienced stress, and that's amazing. But there are those possibilities of that happening with a new environment and kind of being placed into a new setting. Also, the final one here, students will identify and practice coping mechanisms for when stress and time management is exposed. So just learning how to cope with those. If the opportunity does present itself where it's, you can be involved in X, Y, and Z, but you also are currently involved in X, Y, and Z, how can we kind of balance that? And that's the key to this lesson is just overall balance and how can we cope. Down here, this is just kind of going over the priority. And I mentioned this briefly earlier, but a priority for this project is practical application. So the interesting thing is this isn't necessarily content-based. It's more of kind of just a underlying knowledge of how this can be prevented and how can we kind of utilize this and make it successful for not only college, but just life in general. Because of course we all want to live a life very minimal, if possible, very minimal stress. So we want to ensure that students are able to fully understand so they can apply these skills to future situations in order to prevent stressors from affecting them mentally and physically. So that's the goal here. We're just trying to completely prevent that if possible. And I also kind of threw this in here. I just think this is a kind of important little tidbit. While assessments and the analysis phase are essential components to this process, it's even more important that there's a real world application. because this way the content is obviously understood, but it's also relatable and it connects, because that is also a great way to kind of register what we're learning here. So let's kind of go into the theories and how this relates to those learning theories that we've been learning about all semester. This project connects to learning theories because it's a very experience based. Yeah, like I said here, it's very, real life application. This is a real life situation that we most likely will experience. The subject here is very emotional and environmentally based. So they are being, kind of taken out of their comfort zone and completely put into a new environment, which can have a very big impact on somebody. So one of the attributes that sets this project apart, which I kind of already mentioned this here, it's not really content based, so that is going into more detail there. Overall, though, this course has been super helpful and very practical for me personally. Learning theories connect everything that we do, and I love learning about those and kind of engaging more with that, because I think it can be a little bit like almost a universally known thing, but they're super interesting. They give reasoning to our responses, how we interact with one another, and of course, obviously how we learn. And this class, I think personally, was very well executed, interesting, and very engaging. So thank you, Dr. Jones. Hope you enjoyed this final project.